Bosh. Welcome, welcome. Again, another rush video, so I apologise for any random tangents. But if you're a long-time subscriber here, there's a sort of inevitability with the videos that I do, where I'm just thinking out loud, whatever sort of comes in the moment. I didn't really have a clearly articulated topic for this one. That's just how radical I suppose I am. Just slapping on record. No kind of plan, no objective, but that's how we explore in the most primordial way. It's we're just being open to whatever comes. Literally anything. And, I guess I'll sort of tie that into, this general theme of my podcast and channel, which is the exploring of the mind and the exploration of the patterns of one's mind, and how often, sometimes we have this kind of agenda, this sort of clearly articulated objective, a goal to exploring the mind, something to orient our exploration. But I think as well it's useful to, at times, just simply explore, not with a clear sight of what is going to come up, because having a kind of an orienting the sight, that can kind of filter your exploration, and it can hinder your capacity to be truly receptive to whatever arises. Of course, sometimes it's useful to have an objective to your inquiry, but for the deepest forms of creativity, I think there needs to just be a radical openness to just whatever arises, to whatever seems to percolate within your mind. I suppose when people meditate, the activity of meditation is a profound openness to whatever arises. Often people meditate with the objective of stilling the mind, or of attaining some kind of definition of enlightenment, or in order to attain more focus, to reduce stress. It's a similar way to the reasons that people pray sometimes, that people often pray for egocentric purposes. They'll pray to such that this or that thing goes well, so that they can have this kind of outcome. They don't pray often for the sake of praying, as a kind of prayer of gratitude, just simply being open and welcoming of the moment, simply as it is, without a desire to change it. When your mind is oriented in that manner, where you're not trying to change or to look ahead to something, you're just looking at it simply as it is, that's when your mind is most unconditioned. You're not conditioning your mind in that position, in order so that it may produce this or that thing. You're just open and receptive to it, simply as it is. And, so much of our dissatisfaction in life comes from this constant desire to condition the mind, constant desire to move towards some vaguely articulated ideal of what is better than now. But we never are able to escape the now. The now is a constant, ever-present aspect of our conscious experience. So if you can't find truth, if you can't find peace in the now, where else could you possibly find it? You know, if you really think about our conscious experience and its primary nature of this present experience, you'll notice that you you go from place to place, from different scenes, scenarios, without ever leaving the fundamental home of your consciousness, the fundamental home of the now, the present, or just this. There is no real experience of the past or the future. They're all just ideas that our mind articulates in the now. They're all just ways that in which we condition and filter the now. I think conditioning our perception, it's a fundamental aspect of organismic existence. We're organisms, we have to survive. And in order to survive, we have to condition and filter reality in an appropriate manner. So really these sort of dispositions of our mind to constantly be looking ahead, there's a deep evolutionary component to that. It's something that we are genetically predisposed to. But then there is this mystical component to consciousness, in that sometimes we're in deep states of meditative trance, in music, psychedelic experiences. We are afforded a glimpse of a kind of awareness that truly transcends our organism, that truly transcends the ego with all of its conditions and filters that it imposes on experience. One is acquainted with an awareness that is truly egoless and unconditioned and primordial. It's primordial as there is a sense of radical spaciousness, a spaciousness that transcends the small sense of self, the small egoic self. And I think this is really where the true source of true creativity arises from. When people live within their egos so fervently and religiously, they stifle their capacity to really enter into those deep states of flow, which correspond to a kind of tapping into this deep awareness, this collective unconscious. Our ego will filter that into some kind of a hazy approximate limitation. Our egos does very much limit our perception. It restricts openness. And it creates kind of tension points with our mind. But when we attend to the world without ego, when you look without conditioning, just with a passive and receptive openness to just the way things are, there's no forcing, there's no tension. It's a relaxation. It's a profound relaxation. And through that relaxation, one discovers and remembers a stillness and silence. Not the sort of silence that just comes in between thoughts. This is a very deep, fundamental silence. It may feel like a hum or a kind of vibration. It's like our egos seem to take our conscious energies into all sorts of frantic endeavors where we're constantly going. But when you cease that sort of egoic striving, when you realize that it's not going to take you anywhere that isn't the now, you just sort of step back, you suspend that egoic process, and then there is this almost deafening silence. Maybe the mind will re-arise with a kind of, what the fuck, kind of, what am I meant to do now? And of course you will do stuff. I think the thing that I want to point people to thinking about is, where does the center of their actions lie? When they act in the world, are they acting from this position of silence, of silent openness? Or are they acting from a position of egoic agenda, of egoic conditioning? Do they do stuff in the world for certain objectives of how it relates to them? Or are they doing for the sake of doing, because it's the right action, with a kind of openness to how things will play out, a kind of detachment from outcomes, detachment from conditions? Because mystical perception, mystical states of consciousness, they are far less conditioned than our more egoic states of awareness. They are much more receptive simply to the way things are, and they aren't rampantly struggling. There's not a swimming in the ocean with a kind of grace and openness. But when we're egoically swimming, it's like we're trying to force ourselves to swim faster. But it's kind of futile, really, because you're always swimming. And it's just a matter of like, well, how are you going to paddle in this ocean? Are you going to paddle hard and fast, trying to force yourself through the water? Or are you going to sort of glide gracefully through the water? And, I guess we all have to answer that for ourselves, I suppose, through our actions, not just through what we say. Because you can say anything. Words really are cheap, but your being is the raw expression of you. And you can't lie with your being. You can lie with words, but not with actions, really. But yeah, like and subscribe. That's been interesting. And yeah, I don't know. I seem to always get a bit deep in these ones. Yeah, my mind just seems to move to these places sometimes, I suppose. Be interesting. I'm gonna be talking a bit more about mystical states of consciousness, and as well psychedelic states of consciousness. Not that I'm necessarily exploring that aspect of my mind currently, Wink, wink. But I'm always remaining curious to reality, to the exploration of its patterns, into real deep exploration into causes. Because when we do introspect and we're trying to understand why our mind does what it does, you are in that activity trying to understand the causes of your mind, the causes of its patterns. You're not sitting with just the effects, you're trying to look underneath, see what is generating these effects. I think that's one of the deepest interrogations into reality, really, trying to understand the nature of causes. So yeah, I think I'll leave that there. Leave that there. Good rest of your day.